Back with you here this week on Gridiron 2023. Ron Poniewasz and Larry Kelly, your Gridiron crew. We're going to talk some football. Larry Kelly is a member of the Luxembourg Garbett Kelly and George Law Firm. He's the Shenango varsity baseball coach and the former ninth grade basketball coach, boys at Newcastle High School. Larry, thank you for joining us. Welcome, my friend.
Oh, listen, it's a great time of year, man. We're getting down close to playoff football. We're now in playoff baseball. It's one of the hockey's going. Basketball will start soon. So it's a great time of the year and a great time to be on our award-winning podcasts and talk about some of the great players in Lawrence County. And you're going to tell us about a guy that scored 5 touchdowns on Friday, right?
But you're finally embracing the honorable mention award, huh? Okay.
Well, no, we're going to be, my man Pete got some music going, some good stuff. We're going to win it all this year. I'll be disappointed if we don't.
Okay. All right. As Larry mentioned, we have quite a story to tell you about a running back from Wilmington High School. And we'll also expand on Wilmington in our secondary topic. And then third topic, we will talk about the schedule for this week. But first off, as Larry said, we have Ben Miller, a 5'10", 200-pound. He's listed on the roster as a fullback, and he also plays safety. Last week, he had 19 carries for 307 yards and 4 touchdowns on runs of 13, 10, 61, and 12 yards. He also caught one pass, the team's lone completed pass, for 20 yards and another touchdown. So he accounted for 5 scores in all in a 55-20 win over Slippery Rock High School.
I didn't have 5 touchdowns in my entire football career from Pop Warner on. And Ben Miller had 5 in one game, 307 yards. This is the second week in a row he's had big back-to-back games. And how about the Wilmington Greyhounds? They ran the ball for 515 yards last week. Mm-hmm. That's Wilmington football. They're still not throwing it very much, but hey, they won a lot of games for a lot of years running the ball down your throat. And I think they pretty much just certify what I've always said. You got to be able to run the ball in high school football to win games. And they certainly know how to do it.
Yeah, Ben Miller right now for the season has 151 carries for 1,247 yards, and he scored 16 touchdowns. And in their offense, the wing T offense, Larry, as you know, you just never know who's going to carry the ball in any certain play. It could be the quarterback. It could be, any number of backs that they have in the backfield. But Ben Miller right now leads the show for that team.
I know a lot of teams don't run the wing T offense, but there's been a lot of high school teams that's had a lot of success with that offense. There's a lot of diversion. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of hide the ball. Who has it? Inside belly plays. When Newcastle won their last Whitfield championship in 1998, they ran the wing T as orchestrated by the late Frank Makarevich, offensive coordinator at Newcastle when my friend Gary Schooley was the head coach. So I love watching wing T football. I know it's not in vogue anymore, and you don't see a lot of teams running it with the spread offense, but when it's run well, it's beautiful to watch.
That offense is almost like playing backyard basketball or playground basketball, and you're telling somebody, I'm going left. You're basically telling the offense or the defense, hey, we're going to run the ball. Now you just got to tell them, I'm going left, I'm going right, what have you. It's your job to stop us. It's almost in that sense like backyard or playground basketball.
But there's a lot of, there's a lot of plays that you can run out of that offense that, gets the defense moving one way while the play's going another direction. And, mm-hmm. That's what makes it, again, I love watching high school football and I love watching a wing T offense.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Ben Miller is our athlete of the week. Again, he's a 5'10", 200-pound senior fullback safety. Last week, he had 307 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 reception for 20 yards, and a touchdown. His rushing touchdowns covered 13, 10, 61, and 12. And again, that receiving touchdown was of 20 yards. So Ben Miller is our athlete of the week. We will be right back and talk to you a little bit more about Wilmington football as the playoffs get ready to start here in a couple weeks.
There's one thing I learned growing up around here. People should look out for each other, be friends and neighbors that you can count on. So it bothers me when people who are hurt in automobile accidents get bullied by the insurance company. I don't let bullies run over my clients. I do what I was taught growing up. Step up, stand up, and speak up for those who can't. I'm Larry Kelly, and I'm a Newcastle guy.
Hey, we're back with you here this week on Gridiron, and we're going to continue talking about Wilmington football as they have, I believe, just the one game left on their schedule. I don't believe they play next week, so that's their bye, unless the playoffs start next week for District 10. That I don't know, but I do know that they are off next week. So, Larry, they got to accumulate some momentum. They got to keep this momentum going. This week they travel to Grove City, but as we know, throughout the year, Wilmington has run the ball for quite a bit of yardage, almost 300 yards in a lot of their games, including games like Farrell, and this and that. But Saturday night, when watching Notre Dame play Southern Cal, Al Golden, I think, had a comment, and they said, yards don't equal points, and he's right. And that's kind of what Wilmington is, in a lot of their games. Hey, it's great. Hey, congratulations. You run for almost 300 yards. You lost 38-6 or, what have you. It's great that you have rushing games like that, but, it's got to translate into points.
Well, let me tell you something. That's Wilmington's staple. In case you've forgotten, they've won a lot of football games running the ball down the other team's throat. And as we were talking in the last segment, they run the wing T offense, which, again, a lot of misdirection in that offense. When it's run well, even though they're going to run the ball, it's hard to stop. They got an excellent running back in Ben Miller. They thumped Slippery Rock last week, 55-20. They played General McLean. They beat them, I think, the week or two before that. They did run the ball against Farrell. The thing about running the football in a high school football game is you eat up that clock. And, a lot of these teams run the spread offense, and, you take 6-8 minutes off the clock and score, and all of a sudden that spread offense throws an interception. You may not get the ball back again in the first quarter of the game. And all of a sudden you start pressing and things like that. So Coach Fillion knows how to win football games. Wilmington has pedigree. It seems as if they are rounding into form. They're going to be a tough out come playoff season. That's my prediction. Now, the one thing I will say, I haven't seen them play, but in looking at their statistics, they need to be a little more balanced, I think. Just me. I think they completed one pass last week for 20 yards and ended up going for a touchdown. But I think you just need to be a little more balanced in your attack. And I'm sure Coach Fillion would say the same thing, to be really, really successful. And I think they also had a hard time guarding the pass this year. I've noticed they gave up a lot of passing yards throughout the year. So, if he has a week off, he and his staff will tighten that up. And I predict Wilmington will be a tough out come playoff time.
And one guy they got back in that backfield is Tyler Mikulin, who had a nice game last week. I'm not sure if that was his first game back or his second game back, but the more guys you have healthy back there, with a variety of who to give the ball to, Ben Miller, Tyler Mikulin, a Buddha Book on a keeper. The more guys, the better. It makes it diverse, and it makes it hard to figure out who's going to have the ball.
Well, certainly, diversification is good in anything. And, offensive football, if you can run the ball in the high school game, you're always going to be in and around it come the end of the game. And that's who Wilmington is. And they're not going to change. If it isn't broken, don't fix it. And there has been no team in District 10 that has enjoyed the same success as the Wilmington Greyhounds over the last 10 years. They played in 3 state championship games in a row, I think, if I remember correctly. District 10 champs year in and year out. Nobody's looking forward to playing Wilmington in these playoffs. I'm certain of that.
Yeah, and District 10 might have a different landscape too, starting next year, as Farrell is exploring moving out of District 10 and into the WPIL, just trying to figure out where they would slot in at. I'm sure it'd probably be 2A, and then probably somewhere in a league that has Mohawk, Neshannock, Riverside, teams like that, Western Beaver, Beaver Falls. So
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably where they would end up. Farrell, when I was in high school, they were a WPIAL team forever, and they were a staple in the WPIAL, both in football and in basketball. I think the WPIAL would love to have them back. And in reading the article that was in the news today, I can see why they're thinking about leaving. Some of the shenanigans that are going on in these away games just aren't fair to high school kids. Nobody should have to put up with this stuff. Not in the world we live in today.
Yeah, and the trips would be a heck of a lot shorter too. I mean, you're talking they're going to places like Lakeview and places like that. That's Stoneboro, so their trips would be a lot shorter, and that's going to be great for their program, no matter what sport you're talking.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, if they played in that conference, the Shannock's 15 minutes away, Mohawk's about 20, 25 minutes away. Elwood City's a half hour, maybe 40 minutes if they're in the same conference as those teams. And that's probably where they would end up if they're a 2A team. It would be a good football conference, and it would be a really good basketball conference. I wouldn't mind watching the Farrell Steelers play in Lawrence County more often than what they do now.
Yeah, so we will embrace the upcoming District 10 playoffs, because who knows what it's going to look like after this year. So Wilmington's on the cusp of another playoff run. They have one more regular season game, and that's at Grove City. The Eagles are a 3A squad, Larry, as Wilmington is a 2A squad, because there's a mixture of 3A and 2A. And do you think at some point, District 10, I don't want to say dissolve, but they're losing schools left and right, in terms of teams leaving?
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit weird that you're playing, especially in football. There's a big difference between 2A and 3A and 2A and 4A, and that stuff happens from time to time in District 10 because they don't have as many schools, and travel is a consideration when you think about District 10 and the expanse of it. It goes all the way from Wilmington up to Erie, which is about a 2-hour ride. So, again, I'm hoping Farrell does come to the Whippeal. I'd love to see him play Whippeal football and basketball. I really would. And I think there might have been a time, you're not from around here, if the Wilmington was also in the Whippeal at one time, I believe they were. And that was a long time ago, but I would love to see them in the Whippeal. I'd love to see the game between Wilmington and Neshannock, man. That'd be great football. And, that's the old Tri-County League, and those were great games.
Yes, you are correct, sir. They used to be in the WPIL back in, I want to say, the 80s, somewhere around that time, roughly 80s and early 90s.
Well, I know when I used to work for the Newcastle News in another life, I covered Wilmington football, and they played in the Tri-County League, and they were in the Whippeal. But that was in the late 70s, my brother. That was another lifetime. You weren't even born. Were you in the late 70s? Were you born in 1977, 78?
We've had this discussion, 73.
Well, okay. Well, you were 5 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When I used to sit in your seat, you were 5. That tells you how old I am.
I didn't give a damn about the WPIL back then.
Yeah. No, you didn't. I know you did.
So, but I do now.
Yeah.
So here's hoping, we get one more shot at seeing Wilmington and Farrell in the the District 10 football playoffs. That's going to be coming up in a couple weeks, the playoffs, and it'd be nice to see them have one more shot. Get one more shot at glory there in the D10 playoffs.
Listen, Farrell's really good. They're really good year in and year out, but trust me, they don't want to have to play Wilmington again. Even though they handled them pretty handily in the first game. Wilmington, as I recall, put up a lot of yards in that game. So it would be a really great game.
Yeah. Okay, very good, Larry. We have one more segment, and it is going to be our schedule portion of the broadcast, and we'll do that coming up next right here on Gridiron.
I became an attorney because I believe in hard work, fairness, and human decency. In a word, justice. Our workers' compensation clients deserve justice because in an instant, their hard work turns into hard times when they get hurt on the job. No doubt, life is tough, but so am I. I've been fighting all my life, and I'll keep fighting for you. I'm Joe George, and here in Lawrence County, it's personal.
We're back with you here on Gridiron to close up shop for the week, and this is our scheduled portion of the broadcast. All of these games are Friday night, October 20th, and all of them have a 7 p.m. boot. First up, we have Newcastle, 0-5 in the Parkway at Ambridge, which is 1-4, 2-6. Larry, the Canes have entered this game on a 17-game losing streak and on the heels of a 55-7 home loss to Aliquippa last week. What do you feel that Newcastle has this week from a mental state coming into this game after just playing one of the best teams in the state? You know, what's their psychological state right now?
Well, you know, it can't be good. You know, what's beating them is the turnovers. They had 5 last week, 5 turnovers, 4 interceptions, and Stacy talked about that after the game. And look, I mean, they played one of the best teams in the Whitfield. You know, Aliquippa, you talk about balance, 216 yards on the ground, 238 in the air, and they called off the Dogs in the second half. They put up 449 total yards. You know, those kind of defeats don't leave you in a good mental state. But this is a chance for Newcastle to win a game. I know they want to win one really, really bad. They want to break the streak so that you can't say 17 in a row. You know, nobody wants to hear that. And football's a really tough game, Ronnie, and it gets even tougher when you're losing every week. I'm telling you, it gets tougher. And the game is tough enough as it is.
Did you see last week's game by chance?
I did not. No, I did not. You covered it, didn't you?
Yeah, so you say Aliquippa called off the Dogs. I mean, Mason Cook had a 13-yard touchdown run. Newcastle kicks off, and Aliquippa is basically running a no-huddle offense, throwing long passes, and they stick one in with about a little over a minute to go.
Yeah, I saw that. I did see that. I mean, I saw that. You know, what's that all about? I have no idea. Maybe they had their JVs in there and they just wanted to run some stuff. But, I mean, it was 35-0 at halftime. And they ended up scoring, 2 more touchdowns or something like that. I don't know, 3. So, I mean, you were at the game. You tell me, did they pull their starters at some point in time?
They did, yeah. Sometime in the late third quarter, I believe, maybe early fourth quarter.
Yeah. And that's the classy thing to do. You know, when I was coaching basketball, I mean, I could tell a lot of times in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game if it was a mismatch. And I would never run up the score, and I would never press teams. You know, I didn't want guys shooting threes when we were up by 30 points, and we were up by 30 points a lot at Newcastle. You know, I wanted them running offense, playing defense, and you know, not doing anything to show anybody up. And the coaches at Aliquippa are pretty classy guys. So I'm guessing they probably pulled back the range a little bit in the second half.
I ask about the mental state of the program because this game on paper, 0-8 at 2-6, winnable. And next week they play at home against Blackhawk, which is a rivalry game. And I believe Blackhawk's either winless or 1 win. So both games are winless. And it's been a rough season. It's been a rough basically 2 seasons, but keep your minds right. Keep working hard because you have 2 teams on your schedule that you could win. You know, if you play hard and eliminate the turnovers.
And again, I will remind you that Elwood City went a couple, 2-3 years without winning a football game, and now they're a really, really competitive program and gave Beaver Falls a run for their money on last week. So, you know, it can happen. It takes time to develop. You got to develop that culture. And, you know, you got to get the right mindset going and good things can happen.
Summit Academy, 0-4 in the Big 7, 0-8 overall at Laurel, which is 1-3 in league, 2-6 overall. Spartans still have a shot at the playoffs, Larry, and it starts right here with a must-win game. But again, they're going to win this game. It's a matter of coming out of it healthy to set up next week's game at Shenango.
Yeah, well, you know, Laurel had a tough sled against Southside Beaver. They got beat 35-7 last week. And, you know, Sasai's playing a lot of seniors, and Coach Cooper mentioned it. He's playing a lot of young guys, and it was evident in the ground game. Sasai Beaver rushed the ball for 392 yards last week. I don't believe you can give up 392 on the ground and win football games, but a lot of that has to do with the maturity of the guys, blocking and the guys running the ball, and that seemed to be what the situation was. So Laurel will take care of Summit Academy, and as we talked last week, it'll be a great game against Shenango. 2 Tri-County teams for a playoff spot. Should be a great game.
Western Beaver 4-1 in the Midwestern Athletic Conference, 5-3 overall at Mohawk, which is 5-0 in league, 7-1 overall. And Larry, try to put in a call to somebody at a sports book or whatever and see if we can get a length of game on this one, because this is going to be an aerial circus with Western Beaver's Javen Peel, a freshman quarterback who has thrown for over 2,100 yards this year. Last week, he threw for 423 against New Brighton. And naturally, Mohawk's Jay Rona has thrown for, I believe, 28 touchdowns and about 1,600 or so yards. This is going to be an aerial circus. Take the over on how long the game's going to go. Maybe take the over on points. Take the under on rushing attempts. This is going to be a fun football game.
Yeah, it should be a really great game. And Western Beaver's playing better. Coach Mangino today was telling me that they're getting better every week. But Mohawk's the real deal. They beat Freedom 44-20 last week. Justin Boston, 65-yard interception and another touchdown. Jay Rona did what Jay Rona did. Bobby Fadden caught another touchdown pass. Here is that I think the one thing that separates Mohawk from everybody else, and it's the kicker, Wilkins. He had another 41-yard field goal last week. And look, when you get 2 evenly matched teams, it could come down to a kick at the end of the game. And I think Mohawk has the best kicker in the conference, if not in Western Pennsylvania. This young man he kicks them from anywhere. And he's had a couple long boots field goals this year. And I recall him last year doing the same thing. So that could be their secret weapon.
Yeah, and as any good coach will tell you, it's a 3-man game. It's a long snapper, it's a holder. You got to get the ball back to the holder, and the holder's got to get it down for him. So they have a great operation there with those 3 kids: the long snapper, the holder, and then certainly Josh Wilkins, or is it Josh Wilkins or Justin Wilkins?
I think it's Josh. I think it's Josh Wilkins. And again, he had another 41-yarder last week. He had a long field goal earlier in the year. When it gets down to crunch time, right, and touchdowns are hard to come by, and you got a guy that can kick them from 30 plus, that's a big advantage. Yeah,
that's quite a weapon. Speaking of quite a weapon, Neshannock 5-0 in conference, Midwestern Athletic 7-1 overall at Elwood City, which is 2-3, 4-4, and that weapon we're talking about. Neshannock also has a great kicker in Carter DeVivo. Larry Kelly. And so this is another big game. Elwood City needs it like blood to keep their playoff hopes alive. Neshannock needs it for the conference championship chase.
Well, they took care of Riverside last week, 64-20, and Anthony Eakins, 4 touchdowns again. And I mean some long ones. He had a 49-yard run, 60-yard run, 80-yard punt or kickoff return, and he caught a pass for 18 yards. Gino Mazzacchio also had 2 touchdown passes. Balance, 210 yards on the ground, 203 yards through the air. Neshannock's in high gear, brother. They're playing their best football of the year right now. They're really good. And, they dominate the line of scrimmage. And it's tough to beat a team that dominates the line of scrimmage. So, Neshannock is just playing their best football. They certainly are. Elwood City, they need the game. They're capable. But they had a hard time running the ball last week against Beaver Falls. They only rushed it for 51 yards and gave up 409 yards rushing to the Tigers. Can't do that and win football games. They did pass it for 227 yards. And Elijah Palmer McCain, 3 touchdowns again. But you can't give up 400 yards on the ground and only rush for 51 and win a high school football game. That's my view. They got beat 42-28 last week. And Beaver Falls didn't complete a pass in the entire game. So you can't let a team run it down your throat and expect to be successful. That's my view. There may be other people that differ on that. I never coached football at the high school level, but I've watched it for 100 years. I know what the formula is for success. At least I believe I do.
Beaver Falls led that game 30-28 early in the fourth quarter, and they pulled away. So that was anybody's ball game for the better share of 3+ quarters. And where these two teams sit, Elwood City and Beaver Falls in the chase for that fourth and final playoff spot, Elwood City has to defeat Neshannock at Elwood City. That's going to be tough. Then next week they go to Riverside. That should be a win. So we could mark that one down. So Friday's going to be a huge one for Elwood.
Yeah, and listen, they better have their big boy pants on because Neshannock's playing great football. But at the same time, it's a high school football game. A couple of turnovers, a fumble here, an interception there can change the complexion of the game in a hurry. But I'm sure, Coach Mo, he'll have his team ready at Neshannock. So it should be a good game.
Yeah, and Beaver Falls has 2 games left. Elwood City needs Beaver Falls to lose out because if they finish tied with the same amount of wins, Beaver Falls gets that nod because of the head-to-head win. Beaver Falls has Freedom, which Beaver Falls by record is better than. And then Beaver Falls has Western Beaver, which Western Beaver is 5-3 overall. So you can see Beaver Falls losing 1 game. I don't know if they're going to lose 2 games. I don't see them losing to Freedom.
No, I don't see that happening either. So, Elwood City, if they're going to make these playoffs, they gotta take care of business on Friday against Neshannock.
Yeah, Leechburg in non-conference action 5-3 at Shenango, which is 4-4. Shenango breathed some life into their playoff hopes Saturday afternoon with a 37-8 win over Summit Academy. And right now, for the fourth and final spot, Northgate has the lead over Shenango by virtue of that head-to-head win 20-13, and then real close behind is Laurel with a 1-3 conference mark. Not a great conference mark, but again, Laurel's got Summit Academy this week, and then at Shenango, which we figure will be for all the marbles next week. Shenango, this is basically just get yourself to next week healthy as possible, possibly with a win as well.
And work on your game. The one thing that Shenango did well last week, of course, Colton Fedrizzi, 3 more touchdown receptions, 25, 25, and 12. And they passed the ball for 100 yards last week, but they ran it for 144. They've had a hard time running the football, but it seems like they got their running game in gear last week. They're going to need that if they're going to beat Laurel 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, Southside Beaver 4-0 in the Big 7, 8-0 overall at Union, which is 4-0 in league, 7-1 overall. Last year, Southside Beaver dominated Union down at Southside Beaver. Final score was like 35-6 or 38-6. They handled them pretty well, and that was Union's their last loss until Steelton High Spire defeated them in the state championship game. So, conference championships on the line. Certainly redemptions on at stake for Union. There's quite a bit to play for both teams, really.
Game of the week. That's the game of the week next week, man. That's going to be a good one. I'm sure you're going to be there, or you're going to have somebody there covering the game. But these are 2 really good, solid football teams. Offense, defense, special teams. This is going to be a great high school football game. It really, really is.
Yeah, we will definitely have somebody on the scene at Union High School. And lastly, we have in District 10 action, Wilmington, which is 2-4 in District 10, Region 3, classification 2A, 3A, 2-4 in District 10, and 4-4 overall at Grove City, which is 4-2 in league, 5-3 overall. Wilmington is a 2A school. Grove City is a 3A school. Grove City's coming off a big win over Sharpsville last week, like 50-14 over the Blue Devils, and Sharpsville's got a great passing attack, and for them to shut them down like that really speaks volumes.
Yeah, well, Wilmington rushed it for 500 yards last week. So this will be a litmus test. It's going to tell us a little bit about Wilmington and how far they may go in these playoffs. They're going to need to run the ball. That's what they do. If they do it well, they're hard to beat.
Big tilt for the Greyhounds at Forker Field on Friday night. Anything else, Larry, as that is our last game to preview?
No, that's it's going to be a great week. I'm looking forward to the Union Southside game. That's going to be a great football game. Two good high school football teams, probably two best teams in their classification in the Whippeal. You know, they may meet again.
Yeah.
They may meet again. They may meet again in the Whippeal championship. You just don't know, but I'm sure Union's going to be ready to play. I'm sure, and probably be a big crowd. I wouldn't be surprised if you've seen a bunch of the people from the Tri-County, who come to this game. Tri-County fans for years and years. They'll be there to support Union in this game. So it's getting exciting. It's getting exciting.
Yeah, 1A football is really loaded with some good teams. Southside and Union are two of them. Cornell's really good. Fort Cherry is really good. And all these games, even if you look at Newcastle Ambridge, you got a team that, is desperate for a win. Laurel's trying to stay in the playoff hunt. Western Beaver and Mohawk's going to be an aerial show, probably a lot of points. Neshannock, Elwood, something at stake for both teams. Leechburg, Shenango, even though it's non-league, Shenango, stay healthy, win the game, get yourself right for next week. Southside, Union, everything at stake. And then Wilmington, Grove City, just get yourself right for the playoffs. There's something on the line for every team this week.
Yeah, there is. And when you get down to the end of the season, I mean, you want to start playing your best football. It's like hoops. We always say, I don't want to be the best team in December. I want to be playing my best basketball those last 2 weeks in February and the first, couple weeks in March. So I think if I'm a coach here, I want to make sure that we are executing at a high level. I want to make sure that those mental mistakes we made earlier in the year are a thing of the past. I want to make sure that we emphasize protecting the football. We don't want to turn it over, because when you get two good teams playing, it's those things that end up deciding who wins and who loses. Turnovers, can't have them. Execution is imperative. And, mental mistakes, can't make those. Those are the one things as a coach, whether it's baseball or basketball, that made me crazy. You can make a physical error. I can live with that. Lord knows in my baseball playing career, I made a boatload of them. But I prided myself on not making mental mistakes. And, that's the way I want my team to play. And it's true in any sport. It's true in any sport. While the other team's playing checkers, we want to play chess. And if you can do that, that means that you're mentally focused and playing the game at a little higher level mentally. And when you got two evenly matched teams, that normally determines who wins and who loses.
Is sliding head first into third base, poorly a physical error, Larry Kelly?
No, that could be a mental error. It depends whether you should have been sliding into third base in the first place, right? There are sometimes we used to tell them, when you're at first base, only go to third if you can make it standing up. We don't want you getting thrown out at third base. Can't make the first or third out at third base. Come on, Ronnie, you know that.
Hey, you're the one that ended up going to an Ohio hospital for broken hand or whatever it was.
Actually, it was second base. I slid into second base and broke my wrist. Yeah, that's what I did. And now I'm not allowed to slide anymore. My wife says I'm not allowed to slide anymore. But if she's not watching, I might still do it. You never know.
The next step is to take your car keys away from you. That's where we're at.
That could happen also. Oh, man.
Well, enjoy the games, everybody. We have a lot of good ones this week, 7 of them to be precise. And we will see you next week. We thank you for joining us. We will see you next week right here on Gridiron.
And if you have VISTA, vision, integrity, if you're selfless, if you're tenacious, and you have average ability, you can accomplish all your goals. You can be as successful as you want to be. I know this because my father told me, go rock and go get 'em.